This is the Horse Radio Network. This is a combined episode of the Stable Scoop Radio Show, the Eventing Radio Show, and the 2010 Radio Show on the Horse Radio Network. Rolex chatter with all the Horse Radio Network hosts. We thank all our sponsors for their support of the shows. Please give them a try. Also, thank you to Gina Miles, Clayton Fredericks, and Karen O'Connor for helping us with our daily coverage.
This is Helena B.
I'm Samantha Clark.
And I'm Chris Stafford.
And this is Glenn the Geek, and you are listening to the Eventing Radio Show, the 2010 Radio Show, and the Stable Scoop Radio Show all in one.
This is a real mishmash, Glenn.
It's the first time, actually, in the history of Horse Radio Network that we've had all the hosts together at once.
And you two get to share a microphone.
I know, and we're feeling really cozy over here, Helena and I.
We need a title for the show. Is this the wine and cheese?
This is the wine and cheese episode. That's right.
Cheese and wine?
Cheese and wine. Oh, okay, yeah, I think we've all had a little too, so we'll warn you about that.
And I can say I'm the only one that's drinking water tonight, so I can't take responsibility for my co-host this evening.
That's the official disclaimer.
Well, the real reason we're doing this show is a review of Rolex. We had such a good time. We were all there. And Helena came down, really, for your first time to Kentucky, let alone Rolex.
Yeah. I got on a plane for this. This was a big deal.
Big deal.
This was a very big deal for me.
Come on, a little closer. So tell us a little bit about what you think about Kentucky.
I love it. I was pleasantly surprised. I thought coming to the middle of America would be like the middle of America. But it's very welcoming. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. It's very horsey. I mean, you know, when you leave a very horsey part of the country and you come to another very horsey part of the country, you feel right at home. So it was a lot of fun, and being at Rolex was beyond amazing. It was like what? It was like going to a rock. It's the horse version of Hollywood, you know.
Were you surprised? I know you said to me earlier that you are a closet Anglophile, and were you surprised how many English and Irish people you saw at Rolex?
Yes, I was. Oh, you know what? I was surprised at how many English and Irish people were in Kentucky. Rolex, because it's such an elite event, because it's such at the top of the sport, it didn't surprise me that it attracted people from all over the world. I guess, I don't know, maybe it's because I don't know that much about my own country, about about Kentucky.
You've been too long in Boston.
And New York.
New York,
yeah, you know, we have a very narrow view of the world. But, you know, in coming from the Northeast, we do have a lot of people. We have a very diverse community. So the English and the Irish people I love it. I mean, You
said something, too, about the accents that you found down here weren't real Southern. You really liked the accent that is here in Kentucky.
Yeah, and like the English accent, I think it's very elegant. Some accents just make the English language sound worse than it can be. And the Kentucky accent was very elegant. It's very smooth, like maybe bourbon. If I drank bourbon.
She just had some Kentucky bourbon ale. I think that might have something to do with it.
Well, Glenn, I think you should explain why we're all sitting around the same table to do this wrap-up show, because we've been covering Rolex every day of the actual competition. And so you thought it would be a good idea if we all got together, since we're all in the same town, this show could run over the 3 shows this episode. So this is good for the Eventing Radio Show, for the Stable Scoop, and for the 2010 Radio Show. So it's a miscellaneous show, would you say?
Yes, and the reason I thought it would be good is we have all the hosts of all the different shows here, and I'm actually trying to kill time as I'm looking an email up on my BlackBerry that I wanted to read to you guys that you haven't heard yet. And I thought we'd start the show with this. We got an email. We encourage emails from everybody. We love to hear from our listeners around the world. We had the best time, Samantha and I. You know, we were stuck, really, in the media tent for 4 straight days for, 10 hours a day. But it was so much fun because we were conversing with people literally from around the world. In the live chat that we did for this, when the Cover It Live that we did, we introduced a whole lot of people that had new technology Cover It Live, first of all. And it was just so neat. The coolest part of the 4 days was that 50% of the audience, according to our poll, was with us the whole 4 days. And we had over 500 people in that chat room every day, and they were all watching the live feed. They paid for the live feed, but they wanted to chat with somebody. They were sitting at home or sitting in their office, and they wanted somebody to talk to about what they were seeing. And that's why, wouldn't you say that's why they were there?
Absolutely. I think that's what makes eventing great. Everyone wants to share their passion for it and talk about it and discuss it. Like you said, like discuss what they're seeing and talk about it. And we were there and we were able to have that forum for them. It was terrific. It was so much fun to be a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a wonderful community spirit with eventing that you won't find with every discipline, Glenn. And, you know, I've been accustomed to this for so long now. And as Sam says, you absolutely get it. Excuse me, and I haven't been drinking. You absolutely get it in eventing. And it doesn't surprise me that they wanted to all come into this one room and compare notes and chat about it. You know, you might get a little bit in dressage, not so much in any of the other disciplines. So it's quite interesting, and it'll be interesting to see what the stats look like for the show and for the podcast, which we did every day.
Well, I can tell you that in the 4 days we were 10 times our normal 4-day download numbers.
Wow.
We were in the thousands of downloads for those 4 days, which is 10 times what we normally do.
So I'm waiting for this email, Glenn.
All right, so we got this email today, and it was just so nice. This is from Jean, and she doesn't say where she's from. She says, "Thank you so much for the wonderful Rolex coverage. I wasn't able to go and found your podcasts were on iTunes." So she found us through iTunes. She didn't even find the website. "I could imagine the sun on my face and the smell of the horse park as you described every day. Thanks for making my working day bearable. I look forward to listening to more eventing coverage."
Well, that's great. It's good to know that somebody was listening.
Yeah. You know, and that's the reason I wanted, at the start of every show, we talked a little bit about what we were seeing and what we were experiencing, and that we were recording that show overlooking the cross-country course, and it was so beautiful and so wonderful out. And Samantha, you did a great job in the live coverage of really setting the mood and telling the story. And I think that's what makes really our shows work, is we tell a story. You know, you can listen to shows that are just dry and just, you know, rattle off statistics and give you facts, but the difference with our shows and what we try and do in the Horse Radio Network is tell a story. Yeah. And I think that's what our passion is, and that's what really makes it work.
And I think we did. We had so much fun that we couldn't help it.
Right. And we weren't drinking during Rolex.
No. Well, it proved, you know, that's the way to engage an audience, is to tell the whole story, you know, the start, middle, and the end. And I think you really proved it with this. And now we have to wonder, where are we going to go next with it?
Well, I think that, you know, what we've been doing all along here is we've been listening to our listeners. We've been following them. Whatever they wanted is what we did. We started those chats on Wednesday or Thursday and ended them in a totally different way by Sunday. We followed what the listeners wanted. Mm-hmm. You know, we had our idea of what they would want, but we changed that.
Well, what did they want? What were they asked? What kinds of feedback and input and questions were you getting from listeners on Cover It Live?
They asked some questions, and then on Saturday we ran into some trouble. We started trying to cover everything, but with the time delay, it was very hard to get it out there. So we were going to try and shut it down, and then we opened it as a chat room, and then basically they did the reporting for us. They were watching it live, and they did it for us, and we just kept it open as a chat room, and they loved it.
One of the things that we did do is we took a lot of pictures every day, and we put the pictures up so they could get a feel from the pictures of what we were seeing and what we were experiencing. So we didn't have video to do that because we weren't allowed to have video to do that, but we did it through pictures. And you know what? I think sometimes a still picture is still more dramatic than a video. You know, it can capture something really that a video can't in many ways, and that's why there's still photographers in the world. Is that there are certain images that just capture you, you know, and I think that was part of what happened there.
Well, one of the other things that we wanted to do is make sure our listeners realise that how much we do listen to them, and we said at the end of the last show, Glenn, in the horse park, when we were doing the wrap-up on Sunday, that we want to hear from our listeners because they are very much guiding where we're going. And I think the coverage that we've done this past week, of course, it's innovative. No one else has done it to the extent that we've done it. And since it's the first time, we really need to hear back from them what they actually want from us now in all aspects of our coverage, and not just from the events, but also the weekly shows that we do. So, that's an important component to the success and building our audience.
And that's true of all the shows. The Stable Scoop show and the WEG show that we do, the 2010 radio show. We want to hear from people. We want to hear, and we do. We're starting to hear from people now. And we've really been doing this now for 6 months. We started Stable Scoop. We're on episode 38-ish or something like that. I have to look every time because I've pretty much lost count. And pretty soon, I have to figure this out, we're going to be at the 100th episode on Horse Radio Network. If you combine all the shows, that's 100 episodes of fun that are out there, and I'm proud of it. I hope you guys are.
Too, I think we provide that hub when you're excited and when you're passionate about something, no matter what the discipline is. I think the passion unites people, and you need an outlet because we're so spread out. We're all over the country. We're all over the world. And the Horse Radio Network gives folks a place to come and check in and to share that excitement and to get feedback. And that's the beauty of technology and the internet, is that it bridges the gap, the geographic gap that we might otherwise feel.
Well, that's true too, and I was pleasantly surprised at the people that were actually listening to us, Glenn. I didn't share this with you, but during Rolex, a number of friends, colleagues, from officials to media, and several officials actually, and event organisers. People that are involved with the sport administratively or in any capacity, how many of them were listening? How many of them were downloading those podcasts and listening to them on road? And I was pleasantly surprised, I must say. And because I would ask them, "Have you heard of the Eventing Radio Show?" And oh yes, I listen to it. I download the podcast every week, and I listen to them when I'm driving to events, and not just the riders, but officials and administrators. So that's encouraging because we are getting across, the whole spectrum of the eventing world.
And Glenn the Geek got recognised several times.
Oh, yes, for my voice, of all things.
God.
I would be waiting in line someplace, and they would come up and say, and I would talk to the person next to me, and somebody behind me would say, "Are you Glenn the Geek?" And I'd say, "How do you know?" And they'd go, "I recognize your voice." So I must be either out there too much, or I have a really weird voice. I'm not
there's
sure.
There's not enough room in his room for a head. I have groupies, he said. He came home from day one at Rolex. I have groupies. I said, I'm getting on a plane back to Boston. There's not enough room for me and Glenn's head.
It is fun. I mean, it is fun. You know what, too? Stable Scoop, we get to do what's fun about Stable Scoop is we just don't do one discipline or one subject or one topic. We get to pick anything in the horse world we want to pick. And we had one of the best interviews that has ever been. Throw out don't throw them out, but take out all the professional riders we've done and everything. One of the coolest interviews that what I'm talking about too. We did a couple weeks ago on the Morgan episode. It was a 7-year-old girl who had won the writing prize for the Morgan Association, and she was the sweetest interview we have ever had on the Horse Radio Network. You listened to that interview, and I got some emails on it. You wanted to melt your heart. Because she was so sharp, so clear, it was just amazing. She was an amazing interview.
And she was appreciative. This was a kid who got it, who won a horse. She won a Morgan horse. And at her age, she understood what it meant to win a horse, to work for a horse, to bring a new horse home, what it meant to her life, her mother's life. That's the next generation of horse lover. It was...
And you'll appreciate this, Chris. She actually did a video as a call-in talk show where she was the host. That's how she ended up winning it.
Was she in 4th grade?
She's in 4th grade. And she actually had questions from the callers, and she would answer the questions from the callers about Morgans. And that was the whole concept of the thing. And she did this whole video with this call-in talk show.
Well, maybe I should hire her in the media. The other thing
good.
I think we should mention, and I hope we mentioned it enough during Rolex, Glenn, was the support we got from the Pony Club kids.
Yes.
They were just fabulous. We had different pony clubbers each day calling in with their report. That was so much fun to do, and we undoubtedly will do it again because, it really was so much fun, and to hear those different perspectives, and a perspective that, none of us, as grown-ups, would have been able to convey. It was, I think it was lighthearted. It gave us a little bit of contrast in the show, and I know they enjoyed it.
Yes, they had a good time, and I think that I'm going to give them all a call tomorrow and thank them because their reports were great. They were concise. They were, they were good. They gave you a feel for what they were experiencing. I don't know if you got to listen to all of them, Chris.
Some of them.
Yeah, and the last girl there on the last day, and we'll have all the names here for you by the end of the show today, but she just did she loved watching the stadium, and she just loved every part of that.
And I thought some of them really took it upon themselves to do a little report of the competition too. I thought, well, you and I could be, just be redundant here.
They were pretty good. I listened to their reports, and they were actually...
Did you?
Yeah, they were enjoyable to listen to.
Yeah.
They knew it. They did their homework.
Yeah.
I thought that was well done.
And again, to your point, Helena, they were passionate about it. There was so much enthusiasm there for the sport, and they really got into it.
Well, let's give their names here. We had Shalise Everly of Big Walnut Creek Pony Club in the Heartland region. We had Michelle Mercier, who said that that's not the way she pronounces it, but I can't remember. Sorry, Michelle. That's the French way. In the Heart of Illinois Pony Club, Hunter Oaks PC Riding Center. And then we had the attached at the hip duo of Whitney Abraham and Catherine Abrams. And they're from the Sinking Creek Pony Club. And I have to say, when they first called me, I thought it was the Stinking Creek Pony Club. And I said, that can't be right. It just doesn't sound right for a pony club. But they did a great job. They did the Saturday cross-country day report.
Yeah, the two-hander.
And then we had Max McNamee, who did Sunday's wrap-up of the whole Who Won, and she did a great job with that. And she was from the Black Oaks Pony Club. And we just thank you all. We thank the Pony Club for putting that together. Mary over there at the Pony Club really did a good job of notifying all the chapters around the country and all the clubs and getting volunteers. And we had a lot of volunteers, and we're sorry for the ones that we couldn't use. We could only use so many, but maybe next year we'll be able to use more of them.
And another thing I noticed, Glenn, during Rolex was how many more people were following us on Twitter. Both Horse Radio and myself personally did. I know our professional tweeter here, Samantha, you probably got a lot more followers during those 4 days, did you, Sam?
Yes, I think they're all going to be pretty disappointed now. As nothing to say for myself since Rolex finished.
And you are the fastest typer on an iPhone I've ever seen. iPhones are not easy to type on in the first place.
Yep.
And you book on that iPhone.
I think she was rehearsing, when she knew she'd got the gig at Rolex. She's been doing her homework.
Well, we're going to take a short break here to acknowledge one of our sponsors, and we thank them for being part of all the shows as well. And we're going to be back to talk a little bit about the new stadium, the new digs at Rolex and the Kentucky Horse Park, and what we think is ahead for the World Equestrian Games. Thanks to Equestrian Collections for their support of the Eventing Radio Show. Equestrian Collections brings the whole universe of equestrian shopping right to your fingertips. Every day they have the widest selection around with over $100 million of products for you to choose from. They are big eventing supporters with their 4-star eventing e-catalog right on their website at equestriancollections.com. And they have a complete line of tack and clothing for eventers and have a fantastic Rolex offer for you. If you place an order on the website by the end of April, by April 30th, and use the coupon code ROLEX, you will get $10 off a $120 order or more. So that's $10 off a $120 order by using the coupon code ROLEX by the end of April. The good people at Equestrian Collections go above and beyond to be your equestrian store of choice. Visit Equestrian Collections at equestriancollections.com. Well, we're back from the commercials, and for the sake of the World Equestrian Games listeners of the 2010 radio show, I'd love to hear everybody's opinions of what they think of the park, the new stadium, how the show went, and really, this wasn't an official test event for the World Equestrian Games, but it was a test event. I mean,
well, it definitely was. It wasn't the official one for any of the disciplines, but it was for the systems, the logistics, Glenn. They tested security, catering, hospitality. They used several different vendors, new vendors that they have not used before for the regular Rolex, and these were brought into play to see who would be most suitable for WEG. So there was some competition there, and things looked very different in the hospitality area for sure. And in terms of the layout of the park and the parking lots, and there were several things that were new and different that were being tested for WEG.
Yeah, I know that they were parking people, anybody that's been there, over on the far side of most people ended up parking on the far side of the campground. And if I had one comment, I would say that they were using golf cart shuttles, and there weren't enough of them. That's the one comment and the complaint I did hear, and people did have to walk that entire distance. Many people had to walk that entire distance. So bigger shuttles, I think, is something they'll be looking at in the future.
And not just for the long distance parking, also for the short distance parking, they were using individual ones instead of getting the ones that they use
the long trains,
the back lot at Universal or something like that. That's the kind of shuttles they need.
Right.
So, if anyone at Rolex is listening to us today, can we put out a plea for longer shuttles for the public
Yes.
next year?
And the media too. No.
Well, no, definitely for the media, but we have another agenda.
So, Samantha, what did you think of how everything went, and what do you think the prospects are for WEG next year?
I thought it went well. I thought the stadium especially was a big success.
I know Helena, she actually sat in the stadium for all of the last day. So what did you think?
Beautiful.
You had a lot of comments.
It was. I was very impressed, and I'm a hard person to impress. First of all, I paid an extra $10 to sit under the shade in stadium, and that was very, very well worth it.
$10 well spent.
It was very well spent. But I'd have to say, I don't think there was a bad seat in those stadiums. The view was fabulous. The seats were stacked just high enough. Each row was high enough so that the row in front of you didn't get in your way.
You said the seats weren't real smashed in like some stadiums either.
No, they weren't super luxurious, but they were rather comfortable for stadium seating. Getting up and down, access was easy. It was just, and it fit a lot of people, and it didn't feel overcrowded. But most of all, I thought the view, it was very hard to get a bad seat in that stadium. That was well planned out.
Well, and she took some pictures from her seat, and she was high enough in that stadium that she saw over the bleachers. She was on the north side, so she saw over the bleachers on the smaller bleachers. She had a view of the lake and all of the park in front of her. She was over the trees, and you could see the entire park. That was a cool view.
Yeah, and you could see. I saw every jump in the stadium course. Every jump, so you didn't miss anything. There's a pole, a support pole. Maybe that cut off a corner of a standard, but other than that, there was nothing to complain about in terms of the view. The restrooms were great. It was the access, the airflow was fabulous. So if you're sitting up there and there's any breeze at all, you'll stay comfortable. I thought that the stadium was well done.
Yeah, and from the riders' point of view, I think they all loved it too. They said the footing was great, and the riders in the press conference said they attributed the good rounds to the footing. They said the horses loved jumping on it. And I think I spoke to a couple of riders after they walked the course, and they said although the course walked a little bit easier than last year, at the press conference they said that was the footing, that it jumped so well because the horses were just loving the going.
Well, and of course, as we know, there were only 3 riders in the press conference, and I talked to a whole bunch more that I was interviewing for Equestrian Live Video. And to a man or a woman, every one of them were complimentary about the footing, and it gave them the base to give them a really good jumping base, which they can't get on a grass footing, obviously, like Badminton and Burley and Poe and Lamulin and all the other 4 stars, and indeed many of the 3 stars in Europe, because they're not on all-weather footing.
Well, so for the benefit of those in the United States that haven't followed the European events, even the stadium and all of that is on grass?
Yes, and most of them are not in a permanent facility. This is unusual for them to have a permanent facility here in this country. In Europe, you wouldn't have a permanent facility. It would be a grass park, parkland of historic housing, and so that makes a big difference. You're moving into a temporary facility, and therefore you can't have a permanent footing like we have here, an all-weather footing. You cannot do that. One of the things, I talked to Hugh Thomas, who's the director of Badminton. He was over here visiting, and he said that's the one thing he did envy the Kentucky Horse Park was the wonderful, all-weather footing that we have here, because he's in parkland, and so too are Burley and Bramham and Blenheim and many of the three and 4 star and the lower star competitions in Europe and on the mainland. So it is very unusual to have that permanent facility, and and as all the riders will tell you, it gives everybody the same playing field. You're on a consistent level, literally level playing field, and that gives the horses so much confidence. I mean, it's one thing in dressage, but it's another thing when you're leaving the ground, and to give all the horses that kind of security that they're actually jumping on a good surface makes all the difference in the world. And that, of course, contributed to a lot of the clear rounds. There were many more clear rounds than often you'd see in the top 15 or 20 at that level.
And a lot more nice rounds. I mean, a lot of them had the last rail. We're unlucky to have that down, but a lot of lovely riding, a lot of lovely rounds. It was nice. It was a nice day to watch.
It really was. All the conditions were in their favour, and if anyone wants to see that course, they can go to Equestrian Life. I did actually a course walk with the course designer Richard Jeffrey, and that will give you a perspective of the course. We did very thoroughly every fence, and to the extent that Richard described the depth of the cups on different fences. And so I think for anyone who wants a little lesson in course walking, that would be an interesting video for them. That was very popular. Actually, I think it was quite a long one, because we walked the whole thing. I think it was about 40.
Yeah, your videographer wasn't very happy about that one. He was complaining about editing that one down.
Wait, 45 minutes to do a stadium?
Yeah, he was pretty thorough.
We were very thorough.
Helena, did you notice how beautiful the jumps are all after different farms, famous Lexington horse farms?
I did.
And Churchill Downs.
I did, because I read the program. I read the
Good
program,
girl.
and they were very. I love the Churchill Downs jump. That looked very inviting, and that seemed like a good way to start off. I would be interested to hear, and then maybe we can get Richard to come on in a future show. But I know that he designs the stadium courses for one show in particular is the Fidelity Investments Jump Run Classic, which is held in the Boston area every year. And I know that the riders always rave about his courses. I'd be interested to hear how he designs an eventing stadium course versus a show jumping course.
He does speak to that in this video that we did at the weekend, because he is both an event course designer and a show jumping course designer right up to the highest level. So yeah, take a look at that, and I encourage anyone else who's curious, Elaine, to go take a look at that, because he speaks to the very point you mentioned.
Well, let's take another break. This will be the last break we take, but we're going to come back and talk about cross country. There were a couple almost There was one sad thing, but there were a couple of humorous things that happened on cross country day too. Not humorous at the time, but I think he would agree they were humorous now. So we'll come back in a moment and talk about cross country day. Business owners know that now is the time to get the word out about what you have to offer the equestrian world at a price you can afford. The Horse Radio Network offers you that opportunity. It is affordable advertising that really works. When advertising on our shows, you are reaching the truly engaged, involved horse person who is passionate about horses and their respective disciplines. Contact Glenn the Geek today at Glenn with 2 N's, that's GLENN, at horseradionetwork.com. For more information about effective, affordable advertising on the most popular radio network for horse lovers in the world, the Horse Radio Network.
Right, and we're back, and we're going to talk about the cross country at Rolex. And we did talk briefly on our wrap-up day that there were some lost shoes. I did find out that William Fox Pitt lost a left front shoe on Navigator, and he said that he was veering to the left before he got to the Normandy Bank, which he said explains why he then had a run out at the Triple Brush after the Normandy Bank. What do you think about that?
He had a flat tire.
He had a flat
Oh,
tire.
okay.
What do you think about that, Chris?
Well, there were a few of them with flat tires. I'm afraid, not maybe more than usual. Actually, I mean the ground got pretty firm. Although they'd had rain at the beginning of the week, by the time cross country came around on Saturday, it had firmed up considerably. They were really on top of the ground. So, from that perspective, no, I wasn't too surprised that there were shoes being thrown, but there were unusually a lot. Stephen Bradley, I believe, lost 2.
Stephen Bradley lost 2, Philip Dutton lost 1. And although the going was pretty good, there were a few places when you crossed over into the park and went over the road, and a couple of places it was a little bit rough.
Yeah, well, of course, they put that surface down on top of the tarmac for the road crossings, and I know Mick Costello, who heads the crew, the ground crew there. He comes along on Saturday morning with his front loader, and he'll tip a whole lot of dirt. But the problem is, in my view, because we do this at other events, it's put in such a place there is still traffic going over it before the cross country starts, so it's rough on those crossings, and it's been driven on by all kinds of traffic before we even start with horses on the course. Now, if you go to somewhere like Badminton or Burley or Bramham or Blenheim or anywhere where we have to cross a road, we make sure that surface has not been driven on to this extent.
So it's loose.
Traffic.
It's loose.
It's loose,
Okay.
and it moves. It moves.
And the places where you cross in the infield into the park, little places like that through the hedges, that was a little rough too. But on the
Yes.
whole, the footing was pretty good.
Yes, and you also have to consider that those hedge cuttings, of course, there's some roots there and underneath. Not much, but it is a rough crossing, and it could be in those spots that they were throwing shoes.
Well, Helena, this was your actual first time to see a 4-star cross-country course, so tell us your impressions of the 4-star cross-country.
It was a lot like I said before, being in Hollywood and seeing some of your favorite movie stars up close and personal. I think the thing that was the most surprising to me was the speed at which the horses ran the cross-country course and the sheer height and breadth of those jumps. Seeing them on television does not do them justice. And, I mean, yeah, the speed. Seeing some of these horses coming around these turns at warp speed, and then jumps that you thought were really scary were rode so beautifully and so rhythmically. That was sort of a learning experience. I don't know which one it was, and maybe you experienced eventers can tell me, but I think it was a bank jump.
I was 25.
It was 25.
Number 25.
Yeah,
And, well, I know that one because we took all those pictures. But it was a bank up to the jump. And when you stood on the downside of it, it looked enormous.
It was really scary.
It really
I walked
did.
away and said, "Oh my god!"
But nobody had any trouble with it.
And
you know?
they all rode it so beautifully, and the horses just ears perked right forward. It was like they saw that jump and thought,
Well,
"I can do this."
I couldn't climb over it if I wanted to.
It was
you know?
up to my shoulders. It was up to my shoulders.
Yeah, because they look at them and they read them, these horses. They read the fences so quickly. They knew in that instance, like fence 25, that they didn't have to jump the whole thing. They knew they were jumping onto a bank. Because at that level, they know where they're going. They know the kind of questions they're being asked. So they knew that all they had to do was pop up onto the bank, and then they'll pop over the rail on the top, which was actually quite small on the top there. But that is very typical of of how clever these horses are reading what's put in front of them. And you'll notice on some of the lines, some very acute angles from a lot of skinners. The horses and the combinations, they read him so quickly.
Is 4 feet the minimum? Is that the minimum they can go? What is the minimum? Some of those skinnies look pretty darn skinny.
Yeah, they can. I don't know if there's a minimum on how skinny they can go. I think that's a discretion of the course designer.
That one
But they
that was
do get,
really skinny.
They
man.
are getting very, very skinny. The Sunken Road was very skinny coming out of there, and it speaks to how technical the courses have become and how it's all about the accuracy of the line when you're going through a combination. And you can point and shoot with a good horse. They'll read it right off the bat, and off they go. But if it's a younger horse, less experienced horse, he'll get there and he'll say, okay, where do you want me to go? And that's down to the rider's experience and is keeping that line. And and making sure they stay absolutely focused on the direction they're going. And they'll know, the riders will know exactly to the blade of grass where they're going to take off, because they walk the course sort of 3 or 4, 5 times even. Whereas, just to remind those listeners who are not familiar with the sport, the horse doesn't get to see it before he goes out on the course, but the rider does.
And also the really good riders like Lucinda are so good at making snap decisions, like when she jumped too big into the head of the lake and had to make a quick decision to do a circle and take the other route.
Well, actually, it's funny you should say that, Sam, because she would say she's not good at those quick decisions, and I said, well, in this case, you did a darn good job.
She did a very good job.
She would say that she's not good at changing her mind real quickly and reacting on it, but she did a superb job, and that really, interestingly, she took 2 long routes.
And she still came in under time.
She still came in under time, which is something she hasn't done before, which is interesting with that mare. One of those long ways was by choice. On the sunken road, but the lake, of course, was not by choice, and that was, just as Sam says, she landed in, she realised she lost her knitting. I mean, she just lost her knitting. It was, oops, now I've got to do something about this, and she responded very quickly to it.
Well, and then the wild thing that happened that day was the dog biting Buck's horse, which, Nigel's the announcer there, and we had Nigel on the eventing radio show, and he's a nice guy, and, we just had him on the show, and he's a very good announcer, and he's been there for 100 years. And Nigel kept saying all day long, do not let your dogs loose. And there must have been 1 million dogs there that day. There were dogs everywhere.
For that heat, I thought there were way too many dogs, and that they say in the news business, dog bites man is not news. Man bites dog is news. In this case, dog bites horse.
On the course, while in the middle of cross-country. Buck was coming around the turn there, I forget between which jump.
Towards the sunken road.
Towards the sunken road. And that dog just ran out, and actually, we didn't realize it till the press conference, actually bit him in the hind leg.
In the hock.
Yeah. In the hock. And while he was going at about 90 miles an hour, clipping down there, and Buck had to avoid him. Buck, I got to give Buck credit. He avoided the dog so he wouldn't hurt the dog. You could tell in the video we were watching, and he said it at the press conference, and he didn't want to kill the dog. And
he said he had to change his line, and he said it stopped his horse's concentration.
And he did get penalties then, but they did take him back.
They did give him 20 penalties for that stop there, but he protested to the grand jury and to the appeals jury, and he won that appeal.
And it was pretty clear. I mean, the dog got his way. I mean,
I need to pipe in here because, and Glenn knows this about me. This is a really big pet peeve of mine. I thought the number of dogs that were brought to this event was ridiculous. In a lot of cases, it was very selfish. This was no place for people to show off their dogs. I understand
not at almost 90 degrees.
But it was just it's a 4-star event. There's a lot going on. These are athletes who needed concentration, and as a spectator, I think it's important for you to have respect for the venue and the athletes, and to understand that bringing your pet is a distraction. It's a distraction to you because then you can't be a courteous spectator. It's a distraction to the athletes, and they're lovely. And nobody loves animals more than I think.
Yeah, you have dogs and cats and all that stuff.
And I think great, bring them. It's except for the Lexington Humane Society, who was very respectfully showing off the dogs who are available for adoption in all the right places, I just don't think it's a good idea to bring your dog to an event like this.
Well, of course, it's something that in Europe, particularly in England, there are just tons of dogs for events. It's you take your kids, you take your dogs, and it is a really big deal. However, there are not so many dogs that get off the leash in England as they do.
They had several here.
Here. And I'm going to put a shout out for Nigel. While he's a friend of mine, there was some comments, Nigel, if you're listening, that his light-hearted quip about keeping your children on a leash and your dogs under control might have been a little bit too flippant for this particular crowd, that they didn't take it seriously enough, and they didn't put their dogs and make sure their dogs were on a secure leash. So it's one thing to let your children run around. It's another thing to let a dog run onto the course.
Especially with 40,000 people there, and the horses, and 1 million other dogs.
And we know that there are many of you who are incredibly responsible dog owners and spectator/dog owners. We know that. But, unfortunately, there's always the few who spoil it for the
Yeah,
the
and
rest
it's not
of
the
us.
first time, and I venture to say it won't be the last time, but I think we've made our point here.
Yeah, yep. So
I think one other person who won our hearts was the Argentinian rider Jose Ortelli, who was unluckily spun from the dressage. He was on his second horse and came back and had a great ride on his first horse, Jose Aladar. Rode better and better as the course went on, got braver and braver. He's a young man from Argentina, very, very messy looking. When he takes his hat off, you feel like he should almost put a hairnet on. He has a little goatee beard, and he's a bit of a wild rider. But he kept going around that course, getting better and better, and his horse was so brave and so genuine, and he kept encouraging his horse and rewarding his horse and patting his horse. And then when he got to the last double of angled brushes at the end, he didn't quite get his angle right. I know Chris was talking about you have to keep your line, and experienced riders know exactly which blade of grass they're going to ride to, and I think he'd forgotten which blade of grass. He was getting a bit excited about the finish line, and the horse was so brave and jumped the very big, almost 6-foot part of the brush fence for him, and he put both his hands down and patted him round the neck and hugged him with both his arms and galloped to the finish and made it. He had lots of time faults, but I think he won quite a lot of people over with that ride. That was nice. That was one of the nice moments in cross country.
Well, I wanted to hear from Helene. We've talked about the competition, and we've done that to death, I think, but the actual competition. But there's so much else that happens at Rolex, and a lot of people come just for the shopping even. Did you get a chance to do that?
oh,
Helena?
she shopped. Much to her husband's dismay, she shopped.
Peter, turn the show off right now. I'm about to talk about what I bought. Not the least of which is a chestnut thoroughbred.
Yeah, that was the other thing Helena did while she was in Kentucky.
All right, we're just not going to talk about that. Yes, I did shopping. I did, and it was great. It was, it's a great way to. I think so many of us shop online these days, and you see a lot of brands and products online. But to see and touch and feel them and talk to the manufacturers' representatives and the retailers was really great. And again, the common thread is the passion. The people here, no matter what they're selling, we're just so passionate about what they have. Is a joy to shop.
Well, tell everybody what you bought,
Okay.
the big thing you bought.
I bought a beautiful tweed hunt coat.
Oh, I thought you were going to say chestnut gelding.
Well, yeah, he's got a vet out still, so we're. Yeah, he was pretty beautiful too. So yeah, I got a gorgeous tweed hunt coat. Not that I have anything to hunt. I'll have to be going out as a guest, but yeah, I got the hunt coat.
And it is beautiful. It fit her like a glove. It's like it was tailor-made for her.
Yeah. And what else did I get? And of course, I did some shopping at the Bit of Britain tent. I got my daughter some stuff, and really, that was the biggest thing that I got was the. But it was fun going into the, trying on the Charles Owens helmets and looking at the Durdow boots, drooling a little bit. I had to wipe my mouth when I left.
And she found, and she didn't share with us till today, she apparently found the best French fries she's ever eaten in the world. And you've promised you would mention this guy on the... do you remember his name?
It was Big Bamboos.
Big Bamboos,
And
yeah.
I had to take a picture of the booth because I said, I'm not going to remember the name. And, I was just starving, and I said, just keep whatever you have in French fries. And I said, all right, French fries, well, fine. And he said, these are the best French fries ever. I said, yeah, I'm a New Yorker. You can't get the skeptic out of me. I said, yeah. These French fries were fabulous. They were seasoned with something. I don't know what it is, but Big Bamboos. We'll put a link to it in the show notes if we can find it. But they were the best French fries. West of the Mississippi. Are we west of the Mississippi here?
No, not
No
quite.
worries.
Not
All
quite.
right, east of the
She
Mississippi.
really
then.
is disoriented,
Yes.
isn't
I
she?
told you, you take me out of New York or Boston, I don't know what I'm doing.
What did you season them with again?
I don't know. It was some kind of magic packet, but it was good stuff.
Well, I can tell you, at Rolex you get everything. You get every kind of shop for all the shopping fans. There's something for everyone, but there's also among the food venues something for everyone too. I did get down there, but that part of the park where all the vendors are, it does cater for every taste. And at one point, I saw this friend of mine walking towards me, who shall remain nameless, but she's an Olympic silver medalist, and she had a big plate.
Is she a United States Olympic silver medalist?
Yeah, and she had this big plate of funnel cake.
I know exactly. We might have an idea of who you're talking about.
Well, she will remain nameless, of course. But I think she was just enjoying every aspect of her visit to Rolex, which included a plate of funnel cake.
This was my first time in the media tent, and I really liked having the 7 TVs to watch with all the different angles. That was Samantha did too. I know you like that.
I definitely enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Beat trying to see it on my computer at home last year. or through the crowds across country.
Yeah, well, it's as you know, I'm a bit of a seasoned old hag at this, and I know there's many of us who, especially when I was doing print around the world where we had so many screens to watch. We would actually sit in the press centre because we had a far better view of what was going on than if we'd have been on any one part of the course, because we could only be in one place at any one time. And so many of us would just sit in front and actually do better coverage. But of course, we wouldn't tell our readers that. They think we were out slogging around in the mud and and living it and feeling and breathing it. But we actually were sitting in the cosy confines of the press office, watching from 17 screens.
Well, I have to give a shout out to a friend I made up at the finish line, actually, of cross country, and that was a state trooper who was up there. And I ended up spending about a half an hour speaking with him, and because nobody ever talks to the policemen that stand around. They just stand around bored to death. And I went over and talked to him, and we ended up having the most wonderful conversation, and I learned about his family and where he was from in Kentucky. But he did tell me, a little bit about that this definitely was, for the security aspect of the World Equestrian Games, this was a test. They had a lot of people there. And I'm not going to say it, but he told me a little bit about what was going to happen for WAG, or for security for WAG. They really are taking this seriously. They're really planning for it and preparing for it. And I think from that aspect, the police were there. They were very cordial. They were very friendly. I saw policemen driving people around in golf carts and getting people from one place to another. And you did get the impression that they were there to help the thing run smoothly this time.
Well, they were upping the game this year, Glenn, to your point, because a lot of it was increasing the operations for preparing for WEG. And, in the past, we've had the participation of the state troopers and the Lexington Fayette Urban Police Department and also the Kentucky Horse Park Police. But this year, all of them were actually syncing their operations a lot more in preparation for the World Equestrian Games. And those of you who walk around the park will notice that the Lexington Police Department has the mounted unit. I'm very proud to say, when you talk to the state troopers, my friends are in the mounted unit because I used to train them. And there were some of the officers out there that come every year. And, of course, they carry the flag bearers on the final day in the arena, too. But they play a very important part in the police operations in the horse park, and they will do during WEG. There'll be more mounted officers in the park during WEG, which is going to be fun. And not least of all, we need them on bikes, in cars, on horseback, because during WEG, of course, we'll have a lot more dignitaries than ever that we get for any one single event here. I mean, Rolex, we get more dignitaries at Rolex than we do at any other event in the horse park, but for the World Equestrian Games, we will get national and international dignitaries, and so it does increase the police operation.
And people are getting excited about WEG. I know the British team are already putting out feelers about looking for houses to stay in and getting ready for it. It's getting. That's
right. Yeah, and extensively close. Because a lot of the teams do like to do prefer to go into a private housing situation than in a hotel, and they do that with a lot of major championships around the world with WEGs, Olympic Games, and so on, where there are teams. And the same with the media.
Because there'll be so many of them. If you think of all the teams and all the support crew.
All right, well, we are plane running out of time. We're plane running out of time. However, I always throw Chris off with something at the end of the show that she looks at me funny. So we're just going to throw another one in here. According to my mother-in-law, and judging by the pictures she took with my camera, you know where I'm going with this, the Most Handsome Rider Award goes to none other than William Fox Pitt. There must have been 25 pictures of William Fox Pitt on my camera in every pose and angle. And what I do have to say, he does pose. He does strike a nice pose in his complete regalia when he's all dressed up.
Well, you know why she got the most photographs of him, don't you? Because he's the easiest to photograph, because he's the tallest.
Yeah, he's about 12 foot tall, yeah.
You can't miss him. He's a very distinct profile.
Coming up for the title, from a lot of the comments we got, is young Tim Lips from Neverland.
Yes.
Oh, he had a huge young following,
Yes.
didn't he?
Yes.
They were-
William
they-
might have to be careful.
And it's funny because Tim's the exact opposite of William height-wise.
Yes,
He's much shorter.
Yeah, no, there's a complete contrast there. But Tim has a huge following of fans,
Okay.
and of
Why
course
don't we
after
do
the
that?
cross country, the
want
kids
me
were
to?
just loving him and following after him. I must say, there's one talk about a sporting comment. I don't know if you noticed this, Sam, that after the show jumping. No, sorry, I beg your pardon. After the cross country, I was talking to Lucinda, and we were wrapping up the interview, and she put a shout out for Tim, and she said, she wanted really to mention what a great round he had, what a great weekend he'd had so far, with his dressage, and then going cross country for a relatively inexperienced. He's only 23. So I thought that was very sporting of Lucinda to mention him, and I think he's picked up quite a lot of fans this weekend.
Yeah, and I think the whole weekend, everyone was so helpful to each other and so friendly. Eventing's just wonderful like
That's
that.
that's the great camaraderie we have. Absolutely.
I think it is important for us to recognize and to offer our deepest condolences to Mike Winter and the entire Wayfair eventing team over the loss of Kingpin. I'm sure many of you may have heard that Kingpin passed away while on course, and we just want to offer our condolences and wish the Winters the very best and moving past such a tough loss.
Yeah, well,
Billy
thank
was
you.
a great horse.
Yeah, thank you. We did that already at the weekend, and I hopefully our regular listeners will have heard that from all of us now, that it's one of those things that happens in the sport that nobody wants to hear about.
And you did talk to Mike this morning, and he is doing okay. He's a little stiff and sore.
He's feeling better. It's hard. It's really hard. They're not just machines, and you know that. You all know that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, we all feel it. I think the whole of the eventing community, too, as Sam said earlier. It's a wonderful community, this eventing community, and we all rally around and support one another. So we all feel this, and, our best wishes to Mike and family. But I think we're coming to the end of the show.
Yes, we are. We've talked for an hour, and it's we appreciate everybody listening. We'll be back just to put some plugs in here. The Stable Scoop Show will be back again next week with another new topic and a fun conversation. Helene will be back in Boston, and I'll be here in Lexington. And then we got the 2010 radio show that will be back again next week.
And I want to mention, of course, the Eventing Radio Show. We're moving right along with this.
Yes, we want to clarify that. We're not done.
There is no break for us. We're moving right on into next week. We'll be talking about badminton, the next of the Grand Slam series. That comes up in 2 weeks' time. So we're going to be talking about our coverage of badminton. And we have a new correspondent in Europe who's going to help us by reporting from those big events in Europe. So we're looking forward to Kate Green joining us. But to start off, we have an interview with Hugh Thomas, the director of badminton, who was here this weekend, and I took that opportunity to talk to him and talk about his plans for badminton this year. So right off the bat, we're kicking off next week with the next major 4-star event in the world, the Badminton Horse Trials.
And thank you, Sam, for joining us and for being such a cool part of our Rolex coverage. We appreciate it, and I think the audience did too.
Again, you're very welcome. Loved every minute. Thank you.
All right, 2010 Radio Show at 2010radioshow.com, the Eventing Radio Show at eventingradio.com, and the Stable Scoop Radio Show at stablescoop.com. Did I mess any of those up?
No, you got it.
I got them.
You're all good. And not forgetting our partners at Equestrian Life, and we thank them for their video coverage of this event and our partnership with them. So we appreciate equestrianlife.com. You can go and check out those videos, equestrianlife.com.
And we'll be back next week on the Horse Radio Network.